Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Joined, as I am, for the first time in a few weeks. He missed the chance to lose predictions last week in person, so we had to pass off that honor to Benji Ritholtz. But I'm sure he's happy to be back to hear me crow about it. Jeremy Cohen, hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, John. Better now. Now that I've won, it's great. I mean,
what do you mean now that you've won?
Did I win? I can't remember if I won this week.
No, I won.
No, you won the week. All right, then I'm not better. Then I'm worse. Benji, what are you doing, man? Come on. Jesus. Jesus won't help Benji, actually. Jesus won't help me either. Jesus would help you, to be candid.
I actually need to clarify who picked 3 and 1, who picked 2 and 2. We'll do so while you guys are doing the pod before we get to predictions. I promise.
I picked 3 and 1 because I remember Benji was lamenting after he picked 2 and 2. He picked 2 and 2, and then he's like, well, Luke is not playing. And then he was hemming and hawing, and I, the nobleman that I am, was like, you can change your pick. You could go to 3 and 1. And he's like, no. I'll stick with 2 and 2. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to take 3 and 1. And that was that. And that's all she wrote. As history will remember it.
When you win as many times as I do, it's just kind of, it doesn't really matter anymore. You're just trying to catch up. I get it. You're trying to get one on the board.
I wouldn't know what that's like either in this or any of my fantasy leagues, which are slowly going off the rails. But more about that another time. Jeremy, how you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm good. Especially the Knicks had a statement win to end the week, especially after that really exciting Hornets game. But, I'd say based on where the Knicks are at in the 20 game mark, I'm feeling fine. It's not like I'm ecstatic, and I'm also not completely catatonic about where they're at. I think they're in a very comfortable spot, and as a result, I am good. How about you, John?
I'm definitely not catatonic. I could say that with some degree of confidence. I feel, and I could speak to this with some level of authority because we went to, where did we go? We went to Disneyland in California, and we went to one of the other parks. Universal, is that a park? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably where we went. And so I did experience a couple roller coaster rides somewhat recently, and I've used that analogy to describe the early portion of the Knicks season, and sticking with that theme, I think this was the perfect way to end the first 20 games, because we keep saying first 20 games, that's going to be kind of the adjustment period. And a lot of times, I don't know when was the last time you went on a roller coaster ride, but a lot of times when you go on a roller coaster ride, you think it's pretty much over, and then right before the end, it gives you a couple final twists and turns just in case your stomach wasn't already in knots. Speaking of which, I cannot ride roller coaster rides like I used to. I don't know if you're still good on them, but I am not. So which is really sad because I expect to be able to,
Yeah. First off, thank you for explaining the concept of a roller coaster. I was unfamiliar with the highs and lows that came from it.
Every roller coaster ride has that segment right at the end.
Sure.
Sometimes they just they pack it all the good stuff in the middle, and then it's smooth sailing towards the final. But some of them are a little bit more like, hey, we got one more for you. And that's what this Knicks last 4 games felt like to me.
It's fair. I'm not the biggest roller coaster fan. When I was 5, I went to Disney World, did Splash Mountain, had a great time. My dad looks at me, he was like, that was fun, right? And I just say, yeah. And then I burst into tears. So the roller coaster is really not my thing.
Okay.
But, I'm glad.
And yet you enjoyed the first 20 games.
I didn't. I mean, I stomached it. It's fine. It's like this. I'd like a little bit more smooth sailing from here on out. But yeah, it's to be expected when you're first getting acclimated. Overhaul that the Knicks made this past offseason, there's going to be some sputtering there. But no, I'm not the biggest roller coaster fan.
Yeah. So let's hope that the roller coaster ride that was the first 20 games is largely contained to those 20 games and not extrapolated out over the entire season. That said, I think let's start here. There's a lot of stuff we got to hit on, including some comments from Tom Thibodeau today, which I think are notable, which maybe will come up during our one big takeaway. But I don't know that any Knicks fan. There are some Knicks fans out there who are like, okay, yeah, 12-8. I pretty much expected 12-8. I don't know that any Knicks fan that I know, maybe you know some Knicks fans that I don't, that is like thrilled or like even like genuinely happy with how the first 20 games have gone. I think more it's a level of like, I accept this. I'm cool with it. It's fine. It's roughly where I thought we might be, versus people who are a little bit more down on it. But I guess my point is that considering that nobody's really thrilled with the first 20 games, I looked before just to double check. Their over-under before the start of the season was 53.5 wins. And as of right now, they are on a 48 point something, whatever, but like, pretty much a 49 win pace, which is not altogether off from where they were supposed to be. So like, I think when you zoom out and you look at it like that, to me, that's probably the best big picture like thing you could take away from the first 20, right?
I'd say so. But I've been thinking about this in between pods, and the team certainly feels different, and it should, right? I mean, their best players largely are here when they weren't last year, at least a handful of them. But I've been thinking about it because something feels different. And again, it's like, well, duh. But I'm saying, yes, from a personnel standpoint, of course, but something also feels changed in terms of how the team operates. Yeah. And I've seen it a lot where it's like this season feels so much different than last year. Sure, there are expectations that maybe there weren't there last season, or the Knicks trading what they traded this summer. That's going to leave you wanting to aspire for a championship. Nothing wrong with that. What I've been trying to figure out, though, is it almost feels like, at least from where I'm seated, and I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, John. It feels like this team is just feels different. And when I say it feels different, it's almost like fans are kind of going through this almost identity crisis because the Knicks, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean the fans, because we're the ones who are watching. We're fans.
Yeah.
The team, I'm sure, is fine and adapting and doing what they need to. But from the fan perspective, things feel different. And I've been trying to put my finger on exactly what is so different. Because when you look at this team and you look at last year's team, I mean, what are the key differences here? Well, I mean, if we went backwards, we know that Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo going out, Karl-Anthony Towns coming in. That's a move that completely changed the identity of how the Knicks have played over time, but we still feel pretty good about that. We can talk about the Bridges trade. Also, side note for those out there, we don't have to litigate the trade and the return every single time Mikal Bridges has an off game. No, believe it or not, we can just be like, wow, that was a bad game.
I thought that was
leave it at that. And then, yeah, I would have thought so too, based on the reactions from every single time he has a bad game and a loss. And granted, I have my qualms, but we don't necessarily have to do that. Okay, so but when we go further back, to me, it feels like at the end of the day, because what the Knicks gave up in terms of win now talent for Mikal Bridges was next to nothing.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason you're comfortable giving up, if you're the Knicks, 5 first-round picks, because the only thing you really sent out was flotsam salary. That's it. You didn't send out any young players of consequence.
Sorry, I really don't want to sidetrack, especially given what you just said about we don't always have to relitigate the trade. But I do think it is worth noting that in maybe not every single trade where a team sends out this number of draft picks, but in the vast majority of the trades where teams send out this amount of draft picks, there is also significant young talent that accompanies those picks. So if we are going to relitigate it, and again, I agree with you, we should not. What's done is done. Let's move past it. I mean, we could do it when we reflect on Leon Rose, but in season, I don't think it's necessary. It's like that has to be mentioned, and it's not being mentioned.
It's not. Same with rotation players. It's not like the Nets can turn Bogdanovich into something of value. No. If anything, it's going to be bad salary or matching expiring salary. But even then, so with all that under consideration, it feels like the biggest difference is then the Knicks don't have Isaiah Hartenstein, who's been playing fantastic basketball for OKC. But then I keep getting back to where it's like, if that's the main thing here, and maybe there's something else that I'm just not missing, and please fill me in if that's the case. But it's like, all right, so the Knicks have clearly figured out what direction they want. Whereas before it was us speculating on, well, they could do this, they could do that. There was some fun in that. Now it's definitive. Now there are actual results paired with it. But it just feels like the identity crisis here is Knicks fans are so accustomed to, even if it wasn't the case, a great defense or tremendous effort. And there's very good effort, but there's not tremendous defense. And on the flip side, this is the best offense we've ever seen by the Knicks. I believe as things stand right now, doesn't clean the glass of the Knicks of the number one offensive rating in the NBA.
So they have the number one offensive rating in the NBA. They also have, and this is, I shouted this out for Tuesday's newsletter, so I'll shout it out here too. Jared Dubin, who I think is coming on the pod at some point in the next week or so, he's mentioned a few times this relative offensive rating thing, where it's offensive rating not relative to past seasons, but offensive rating relative to the league average offensive rating just this season. And his newsletter from Saturday, so before the Hornets game and before the Pelicans game, the Knicks had, I believe, the third greatest relative offensive rating of all time. Mm-hmm. So it is accounting not only for error, it's accounting for this season. And if you go and you look at the offensive ratings, whether via cleaning the glass or on NBA stats, like whatever you want to use, there's three teams, and then there's a giant chasm, and then there's whoever I don't know who the fourth best offensive rating is right now, but like it is an elite offense. So yes, to your point, they're very, very good.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's bugging me the most, which is that this team has sacrificed some of its defense for one of the greatest offenses we've ever seen. And yet it still doesn't feel like it's enough. And I don't mean that negatively. I just mean that kind of contemplatively as a fan, where there's still more work for them to do, but they're missing that thing that we as Knicks fans often hang our hat on, which is the defensive side. And I think that is creating some sort of chaos for some fans, and it's creating discomfort for someone like me who recognizes the offense is incredible and there's more work that they can do to get even better. So that's kind of where my head has been at, but I'll kick it to you. If I don't know, is that do you have similar vibes?
You articulated that so perfectly.
Thank you.
Because, so let me go behind the scenes a little bit. So as you know, I have a rabid, fervent comment section of the newsletter. And just because I read the comments, I read every person who comments on any newsletter that I write. And a lot of, I would actually go so far as to say the majority of the people who comment regularly, not all of them, but a goodly number, are people who were around and remember, even if they were kids at the time, but they remember the championship days. So people who are old enough to have who have some recollection of 1970 and 1973. And I think it's not universal, but amongst those old heads, and I would also go so far as to say even people who are around my age or maybe a little bit older than me who remember the 90s. To your point about the defense, there is just something ingrained in a very large number of Knicks fans that says, if we do not have an elite defense, we are not a serious team. And that's just the way it is. And I don't think that's quite the case for every fan base around the league, because I just don't know how it could be the case for every fan base around the league, because I just don't think there's that shared history there. And so the result of that is that people look at the offensive rating and they're like, not who cares, but like, that doesn't matter to me nearly as much as having a top 5 defense would, even though you look at teams that have been successful in recent years And it's the Boston Celtics, who are the greatest offense of all time. The year before that, the Denver Nuggets, who I know they did not rate out as the greatest offense of that season, but like, if you were thinking about, okay, who's actually the most dangerous offense when they have it going, you'd have been hard pressed to find a team that was more dangerous than the Jokic and Murray like pick and roll combo with all of their shooting and everything else, because that team had Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, the whole thing. And the year before that, a team with Steph Curry, who is the most dangerous offensive player of his generation, won it all. Not to mention Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and the whole thing. So, but that is almost like, now, two of those three teams were great at defense too.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be noted, but like it leaves a situation where you had this Knicks team that last year was not even in the top half of the league in efficiency, and they are now second. That is a meteoric rise by any metric, and it has left a lot of Knicks fans still feeling empty. And I want to go back to the defense in a minute, but I'm going to try to pull off this analogy without getting myself canceled. I don't think it's cancelable, but I could see rubbing some feathers the wrong way. I'm a man, Jeremy. I don't know if you know that. I have at times, I had a long, robust dating life before I met the love of my life and wedded bliss and happily ever after and all those sorts of things. And I've made some choices over that time. And to me, the way that I hear fans talk about going for the offense as opposed to the defense first team, like Cat versus Hardenstein, even though that was never actually really a choice because we couldn't afford Hardenstein. It's like picking the hot girl over the girl that you have like a real something, like there's a real core there. There's something actual to the relationship beneath the surface. To which I say, who says you can't develop something real with the hot girl? It may be the inverse of what people normally do, but it can be done. I mean, to me, that's what it feels like. And it's like, it's like, oh no, you're going surface level. This is baseless. This is ridiculous. No, there's different ways to skin a cat, Jeremy. And that is what I have to say. And I'm being genuine with that analogy because I really do feel like that's what it reminds me of.
That's fair. No, I can't disagree with you. What I think there's also something to be said of the passion that you see when a player plays. It's kind of like that sure. Fire that they have. And I don't want to say the Knicks don't have that because they do. But
okay, finish your point, but
there's something about this team, and I felt this since the beginning of the season, where it still feels like there's not that vocal presence on defense, which again could very easily be a Josh Hart type. OG is the silent type, and I feel like he does a lot of his assassinating.
The strong silent type.
The strong silent. Gary Cooper.
That's it. OG
it's Gary Cooper. Yeah, the strong silent type. OG Anunoby.
Who's Josh Hart? Fred Astaire.
Right. Anyway. Could be. Deuce McBride, who gets in there, starts the game off the bench. There's an energy. They're Knicks players that embody this. It's just what the Knicks have lost. Like, I didn't think Julius Randle was an imposing defender by any stretch. He took plays off, and he just was oftentimes defensively not caring or just made bad reads. But there was also something about it was like kind of a false sense of security where you felt like, all right, he's not going to lock in, but he's got that feeling of not he's going to defend, but he's flanked with someone who I trust on defense. And now, Cat, you have that with OG, but something about it just doesn't. It's to me, it's the rim protection, oddly enough, and it's not even an attack on Jericho Sims or
Sims
Ariel Hakordi. Like he has
rim protection. Yes,
it's purely about like that guy where there's like an unheralded nature to them, and they rise to the occasion. And I say that, and I know that's a really spoiled thing to want, but there's something about that where there just needs to be a level, like a spark. And I don't necessarily mean, again, a spark off the bench. It feels like they're almost sleepwalking when they win, and when they lose, it's against teams that they shouldn't be losing to. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not a lack of confidence. It's just, I wish there was like one other thing that jumpstarts it that gets me really invigorated. And it probably will come over time, whether that's internal or external or still in. And we just got to December. The season just started. But there's something that's missing. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is.
It's this. What is the thing that made arguably made Knicks fans the most proud over the last however many years? I think it would be, well, I'll give you my answer. What do you think it is?
Sure. I mean, I would say it has something to do with the homegrown level of talent that shows significant effort.
Sure. In terms of the way they went about their business on the court, and in terms of maybe whether it's play style, whether it's just any of those sorts of things, what do you think is the thing that made Knicks fans the most proud?
No taking place off, effort, intensity.
Okay. Exactly. So I was going to put it in a different way. I was going to put it like this. Win or lose, you're going to know the next morning, because you're going to feel it, that you played the Knicks the previous night. And I think that was it was a feeling like we've cracked the code. We have managed to take what was great about those 90s Knicks teams and transplant it into 2022, 23, 24. And we're not breaking any rules, but we are the hardest working goddamn little team in the National Basketball Association. And nobody else can shake a stick at that. And that is what is gone. And I think lost in that dismay is the fact that, teams didn't love coming in to play the Knicks last season or the season before that, but they also knew that there was a game plan to beating this team. And they only had one true shot creator in terms of Jalen Brunson. And God knows we know that if you shut down Jalen Brunson like this, you were going to have a very, very difficult time if you're the Knicks winning a game. And I think there were other things as well that went on, and now all of a sudden you could argue that the Knicks are at their best when Jalen Brunson isn't even doing all of the things that we came to love Jalen Brunson for doing over the last few years, because their offense is so dynamic and can beat you in so many different ways. That's why one of my favorite stats of the entire season is from halftime of the Pelicans game. They were winning by 29 points. Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, and OG Anunoby were combined, I think, 6 for 25 from the field. I love that stat. You know, it's another stat I love. Last season, this team was, for everybody who's like, oh, the defense. When this team didn't hit threes, they didn't win. They were 5-17 in games last season where they did not make at least a third of their threes. You know what they are this year? 3-3. So for all of the consternation about all the things that this team isn't doing, I think the fact that they have rejiggered things a little bit. Is the defense as imposing? No, it's not. But now all of a sudden they don't have only one way to beat you. They have multiple ways to beat you. And I think that is the thing that maybe people are not appreciating enough. And oh, by the way, we're only looking at one version, which maybe we could get to the stuff from earlier today, which is Tom Thibodeau, we should say for any. Let me, before we go there, do you want to say anything before we move on to the news and kind of tie that in?
Well, great stats. And I think what you're saying definitely apt. It's not even a counter. It's more just kind of adding to it, is of those two seasons, each, the ones prior to this one, each one received a massive shot in the arm in Josh Hart and OG Anunoby and Precious Achiuwa even coming to the Knicks. So, it's a little different now, potentially. We'll talk about trade stuff later, but I mean, if you look at last year at this point, the Knicks were 12-7. This is through 19 games as of December 2nd. They had the 5th best differential of points per possession. They ranked 11th in offense.
We should say.
Yeah, this last season.
Yeah, I'm saying yes. they were 5th last season. Now. They're 6th now.
Offense was 11th, and this year they are 1st. They were also, though, 24th in effective field goal percentage, which tells you that the offense might be good, but the points that they're coming by, something wasn't working. And last season at this point, give or take this date, they were 5th in points per possession on the defensive end, which is which is far off from where they are now, which last I checked, what is it? 18th? 20th?
Where they are in terms of defensive?
Defensively, they're 22nd.
Yeah, defense are 22nd, but I noted it last night. It's a little apologistic, but like there's a group of teams, especially you can see this on Cleaning the Glass even better. There's a group of teams right now between like 16 and 22, and they're like they're on the bottom of that group, but it's a tight group there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, we don't have to keep belaboring the point. I don't really think that we're in disagreement here. The only other thing, two other things I'll say, and then we'll move on. You know, I think a lot of people are. You just talked about the rim protection versus, and I think a lot of people are upset because you watch a Knicks game, you're likely to see them give up a decent number of threes, right? This team has given up a ton of threes under Tom Thibodeau. Last season, they were 18th in the league in terms of frequency of opponent threes, and it was by far their highest under Tibbs. They were in the 20s every season under Tibbs, including a couple seasons in the bottom 5. So this season, they're giving up a ton of threes. I think they're 27th. But this has always been part of the Tibbs mantra. And in terms of the rim protection, they're in the top 10 in terms of teams are not getting to the rim, and they're actually in the top 13 now. They're 13th in terms of teams how they're doing once they get to the restricted area. So like the formula they've always used, like keep teams out of the paint. If teams are get in the paint, like make sure you're contesting shots. You're going to give up some threes. You live with it. You try to make the contest. Open threes. They're third in highest frequency of opponent open threes this year. That seems terrible, right? You know what they were last year? The vaunted Knicks defense that we all love so much? They were fourth most opponent frequency open threes. So I don't know. I look at a team that last year, like I'm looking at the stats from the playoffs last year. If they weren't getting offensive rebounds, they weren't winning games. Now you could blame that on injuries in the Indiana series, but like that again, this team had like kind of one mode last year, and I like that they kind of have different modes. So speaking of different modes, Tom Thibodeau earlier today said two things of note. One, Jericho Sims should be back within the week. So I don't know. I should have the schedule open for predictions anyway.
Precious Achiuwa?
Precious Achiuwa. What did I say? Jericho Sims?
Jericho Sims.
Sorry. Jericho Sims is very much in play. Maybe he'll get a game ball later. We'll see. But Orlando Tuesday, Charlotte Thursday, Detroit Saturday, and then I don't know if he's meant like within a week from like today, but Toronto is on Monday. So maybe one of those. I would think one of those 4 games. That's notable. And then James Edwards III of The Athletic asked Tibbs about has he thought about pairing Jericho Sims and Karl-Anthony Towns together? And Tibbs basically said yes. He was like, yeah, I have thought about it. We haven't had much time to practice it yet. We were going to practice it, but then Towns got a little nicked up. But he was basically like, yes, I thought about using it, which I'm gonna do my one big takeaway early. I don't know if Andrew can get the graphic up. Here it is. Look at Andrew on the ready here. Shout out to Juan, please, for sponsoring our one big takeaway. You can go follow them wherever you are on social media at Drink One, please, and also check out their website. Where you can find all kinds of locations about where to pick yourself up a case of One, please. But yeah, that's going to be my one big takeaway, which is we have seen, unless I'm forgetting something, we've seen precisely 0 regular season minutes of Karl-Anthony Towns and a center. Right? Am I forgetting? I don't think I'm forgetting one.
We almost saw it for a possession. This past weekend, wasn't it, that the Hornets sent out when they were at their line, you got Sims lining up across from Towns, but then they hit the shot and the Knicks called timeout and took Sims out. So we were robbed of that.
One possession, almost. We saw it a little bit in the preseason. Towns with a 5, and he's played like Cook, Porty, and Sims together. But so the fact that he has said this, I don't know. I kind of wanted to get your take on it because I think you could go different ways on it. I think if you're like, of course, Tom Thibodeau is going to play them together. That's what he's always wanted to do. That's his eventual plan. He's going to convert Towns to a 4, and that's just going to be how this team's going to play. Or you could look at it as this is the continued experimentation by this head coach of what works and what doesn't, and he's just going to try to find as many working tools, I guess power tools in this case, that he could stick in his tool belt headed into the playoffs. And this is him admitting that this is one tool that he's going to explore more. So I'm curious what your thought is.
I think there's also the other option, which is
what?
That just doesn't, it's not something that's going to happen. Where he can think
he's
about
teasing
it,
us and he's just not going to do it.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the Randall Obi conversations to an extent.
Maybe it's possible.
Where
it's possible.
So Precious is, it sounds like, as you mentioned, is about a week away, give or take. The thing that I am most curious about with Precious Achiuwa is when he's back and he's playing.
I know where you're going with this.
Whose minutes will Precious Achiuwa be taking? And I still, my gut is saying that he is not taking minutes from Jericho Sims, but is taking more minutes from, say, OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges. Because if you look at how he has played in the past, and that Tibbs' own comments, where he's comfortable with Precious at the 4. Now, could they do something a little funky? Get Precious in there with Cat? Sure. That's something I could see them doing.
Funk it up, baby.
The question is, where are you positioning them? Because if I had to guess, there might be some switching, but Cat will probably be used more in drop and Precious will be used more on the perimeter. And it makes me wonder where, from what you're saying, from two bigs together, it starts to shift away from what's working. And I'm not saying it can't work. It's just that the Knicks have leaned in on a certain premise. And I don't think that two bigs together, Precious is a little different here, but those two bigs, for example, working together, I have a hard time seeing them turn to it.
It's also because if you do play them together, you would think, unless we really want to go back to the Stone Ages, as they kind of needed to do last year because they didn't have any warm bodies, it also means that Josh Hart is probably not going to be playing those minutes. Although maybe, with the way Josh Hart's been shooting lately, I mean, I think he's quite literally like the third or fourth most efficient shooter in the league when you get above a certain volume. But no, putting that aside, you're not going to play those two guys with Hart. So Sims, you brought up his minutes with if you take away the fact that he played all the garbage time minutes against the Pelicans, he played a lot of garbage time minutes against the Wizards. He's been playing between 8 and he's kind of topped out at 17, 18, although it's usually more 13, 14. I would say 12, 13. It's really 6 minutes a half. And you can't really play a guy less than that. If a guy's going to be a rotation player, right, he's going to get at least 8, 9, 10 minutes. Otherwise, he's just you're not going to have him as part of the rotation. So I almost expect it to come from a combination of the wings. And we know he loves to have OG Anunoby out there. But that guy could stand to play a few fewer minutes. I think we would benefit everybody. And then you take some from OG, you maybe take some from Hart, you maybe take some from Bridges. Now you can only take from so many of these places before you completely bastardize your rotations. But I don't know. I would expect Precious out of the gate to get something around the neighborhood of 10 to 12 minutes. Is that crazy?
That looks crazy. And my one big takeaway is actually similar to this topic, which is talking about minutes, where if you look at this past week, there were, of the 4 games, a possible 192 minutes that you could play per game without overtime. And if you look at that 192, you had Josh Hart playing 149, Mikal Bridges playing 147, OG Anunoby playing 149. I don't think that's egregious, to be clear, minutes. But it's a lot of minutes. Of the 438 minutes, those 3 played they played 76% of the possible minutes they could have played. It's the sort of thing where all 3 of them are currently averaging a high in minutes played per game in their careers. So
Bridges and Hart are both top 5 in the league in total minutes. I haven't checked if it's in average minutes, but I would imagine they're pretty freaking close.
Correct. And that's part of why I feel like Precious is going to soak up some of their minutes. And Like, we've talked a little bit about it before in the past. Sims is playing well. There's only so many minutes that can go around. And right now, the Knicks have their starting five. They've got Deuce McBride. They've got Cameron Payne. They've got Jericho Sims. They're going 8 deep. So, who else is playing? Who else is seeing time? It's probably not one of the rookies. It's probably not Matt Ryan. So if you bring Precious in, it's probably not to dispel Sims. It's probably just because they need more bodies and they want to do something here. But then you do get into the issue, which is Precious is not a floor spacer. He can hit a shot every now and then, but he's largely an inefficient player. And to pair him and Sims feels more like this is what we have right now, and we've got to save minutes. But I'm curious as to how the Knicks, with Precious back in the fold, will start to dole out the minutes and how they pair their players. Because a lot of times Josh Hart and Karl-Anthony Towns will find themselves on the floor together. But are you now bringing in Precious to play more minutes with Towns as opposed to Hart so that you can try to space out your second unit? How does that impact what the Knicks do on a shift basis?
I just looked it up, by the way. OG Hart and Mikal Bridges are all top 12 in the league in minutes. There's only 13 players averaging at least 36 and a half minutes per game, and we have 3 of them. So all of those minute totals could stand to come down, I don't know, 1 to 2 minutes, right? I don't think that's crazy. And then from there, and then just to answer, and then we'll move on to game ball. I think you're going to get Towns and Precious together. I think that's what makes the most sense stylistically in terms of how those guys can mesh together. It makes the most sense to me for those two to play together as opposed to Towns and Sims together. And Benji was tweeting about this today. I saw where it's kind of nice that the Knicks have this change up now. I don't know why I keep going with the baseball analogies where Sims comes in with Brunson when Towns is sitting, and it's all of a sudden it's a throwback to basically last season. Like everybody who missed last season, well, you get to see last season more or less when Sims comes in, and but I also think that Precious and Sims could play. I don't think it's crazy that those two guys could play a couple minutes together here and there. I don't think that that's insane.
No, I don't think it's crazy at all. It'd be crazier to me if Precious is playing minutes at the 5. And I know that we could go through the pedantics or the semantics, I should say.
Hold on. If he's with Towns, then is he a 4 or the 5?
But that's what I was going to say. That's where the semantics get a little different, where is he playing the 4? Is he playing the 5? I'm still operating under the belief that the Knicks see Cat as a 5 and they will try to slot in players around him that work. But right now, Precious is their only other option. They're not making a trade right now. They're not getting Mitchell Robinson back this month. No. They have a healthy player. They need to. That's essentially how they're constructed. This is a larger question, which is, are the Knicks at the front office, is that what they plan to keep doing? Or is that we've only got the players on our team right now? We'll figure it out. But for right now, we've got to start playing healthy, talented players and figure out the fit a little bit later.
It's why this next 2 weeks to 6 weeks, really 8 weeks, because trade deadline's not until the beginning of February, is so valuable for them to get as much evidence as they can before they really do whatever they're going to do in the trade market, and we'll cross that bridge. But it's all evidence. It's all additional evidence about what are these different looks. Right now, we've only seen a couple pitches, right? Now we're going to, I think, start to see some more, which is very exciting.
Quick break to tell you about our friends from Turtle Beach. Whether it's for the gamer in your life or for you to relive those holiday gaming marathons, Turtle Beach has the cheat code for the best gift of the year. For a limited time only, our listeners get 10% off their entire order when you use code KFS at turtlebeach.com. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code KFS. Don't wait. Head over to turtlebeach.com to grab your Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset and gift the feeling of Christmas morning all over again. Why do I love the Gen Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset? It's because, as you guys know, I am not the most technologically savvy dude around, and these babies are so easy to use. I literally open the box, press power, press the Bluetooth button, and boom, I was ready to use these with my laptop, which, as you know, I am always on. And that's just the start. The Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset has an 80-hour battery life. Yes, 80 hours, thanks to their quick charge technology, so you rarely have to think about charging them. It also comes with the cross-play dual wireless transmitter system, which means you could seamlessly switch between multiple consoles and even be connected to your console and listen to your phone for music streaming or taking calls. And I know this is a feature that Andrew Claudio loves. Don't you, Andrew? Hello, Andrew. Can you hear me?
No, I can't, John, because as you mentioned, these are noise canceling. The Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset is great for anyone that just wants to use them as noise canceling headphones, whether you're tuning out crowd noise or tuning out John Macri or his children while they're recording a podcast. The Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset and its noise canceling feature, easily my favorite.
And the fun doesn't stop there, because Turtle Beach has more than just amazing headsets. They have every gaming accessory you could want at high quality and at prices that don't break the bank. From flight and racing simulators to controllers, keyboards, and mice, it is the ultimate gaming cheat code. Again, ultimate immersive gaming experience awaits you at Turtle Beach today. For a limited time only, head to turtlebeach.com and use code KFS for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your entire order at turtlebeach.com. Use promo code KFS. Don't delay. Get the perfect gift now. Happy holidays from Turtle Beach.
Let's give out some game balls. Game ball, of course, is given out to a player, coach, or entity who stood out this week and deserves special recognition. As I took the week, I will be selecting first. And, you know, I could go a couple different directions here, especially coming off the Hornets game, although that would be, or excuse me, off of the Pelicans game, although that would be quite a bit of recency bias. I kind of have to go with the guy that just won the Eastern Conference Player of the Week award, which is Jalen Brunson, because, like, how would it look? Like, oh, good enough to get the NBA's Player of the Week, but you're not good enough to get the freaking game ball. I will just say, in will truly be a shameless plug, I did my quarter season report card for the Tuesday newsletter, and I originally gave Brunson I'll just say a lower grade than I ended up giving him. And that's because I started digging into the numbers. This dude's he is having an outstanding season, and it's kind of been quiet, but he's been incredible. And I mean, the playmaking is really the thing that's popped up recently, but yeah, so I'll give my game ball to Jalen Brunson.
I think that's worthy. I'm going to give it to Karl-Anthony Towns because I feel like it's overdue, quite frankly.
Okay.
I don't know if he necessarily had the best week of the players remaining, but I thought the Denver game, fantastic. And like I said, he hasn't gotten a game ball from me yet this season. So I think he's due. So much of it comes down to the offensive point, but the defense looks better. I know that the numbers at the rim, that stat was floating around for a little bit, and it's calmed down because it's not the most truthful, but even still, it feels like there is improvement.
Some truthiness.
Right. But there's still some improvement on the effort side, and the talent is always undeniable, but it needed some adjusting, and it's not great. You know, it's not like the Knicks are punting on rim protection, but clearly they have said that's not the most important thing here. We need more offense at the 5. That's a worthwhile trade-off as long as you're able to protect yourselves in other ways defensively. I'll give it to Cat just because, I think he went 1 of 5 from 3 last game against Pelicans.
Yeah,
and his average
recently.
It's now 45.5 from 3. Like, that's how absurd he's been this season, where so many of looks, whether it's been, most of it's been catch and shoot, of course, but just as a trailer, they're pick and pop things that I never thought the Knicks would be able to do and do well, and have the offense doing well alongside with it. So I'll give it to him. It's deserving.
It's a great pick. And again, to be clear, nobody's saying the Knicks can't score if Karl-Anthony Towns is on the floor. I just looked it up now. Over the last 10 games, the on-court offensive rating number is identical for Sims and Towns, 122.9, which would obviously lead the league. So they're scoring regardless. it's about having all these different looks and having all these different things that you could throw at teams. And what Towns allows you to throw at teams is just not something that many other squads have. Okay. Next up, detention. This will be a tricky one because perhaps our most obvious detention candidate is just had the best game of the season. Given to a player, coach, or entity that deserves to sit down for a while and think about what they did wrong. Well, you go first here.
I do go first. I will give it to Mikal Bridges, but he did have an incredible game against the Pelicans, which was great to see and very reassuring, which is part of the reason for why I was like, well, who else would get it? I mean, I could have given it to OG, but I didn't think that would really be fair because he had a 40-point game and disappointed offensively the 3 after that. But I'll give it to Mikal. Again, I'm still not worried about him. With that said, you expect better efforts. I don't know. Defensively, like that Hornets game, especially the end of that first half, was infuriating. That was just careless. I understand if you're not hitting your shots, but those are the types of things that just they can't happen. Also, just dawned on me that Josh Green hit 2 buzzer beaters in the game. That's pretty cool. Both at the end of the halves. That's kind of neat. But
I was not cognizant of that.
It's not even the talent or the shooting that was frustrating. It was purely effort, and he wasn't the only one against the Hornets. I mean, that was a game of the Knicks favored to win by over 12, and it doesn't really matter where it is, what time the game is being played, or who else is on that roster. That's a game that the Knicks should have won by more, especially from an NBA Cup standpoint. But also a trap game too. Yeah, for me with Mikal, it really is just the effort. And for a lot of those guys, it seemed like that is something should have been done, but I'll single him out specifically because for the other players, it seemed like, they haven't been as integral in terms of how they've been acquired, which again, I know flies in the face of what I'm saying with the whole, we don't have to talk about what the Knicks gave up. And I still don't really want to, because again, it's done. We don't have to talk about
what's done is done. We're not.
But I also understand the frustration, and so I don't think that's a significant part of it. Wasn't a part of this week. Not a single one of those assets will have an impact on what happened this week. Clearly, Tibbs recognizes there's an issue because he said if Bridges were a rookie, I'd be concerned. But he's not a rookie, and he's got a good body of work to show for it. So he's in my detention for the week, but I think he'll get out just fine.
I think he will. We didn't talk about Mikal much this show because the whole post game was centered on him. But it's just about parlaying this into more performances. That's all it is. My detention, I'm going to give it to Zion Williamson. Play basketball, my guy. That's it. Play basketball. Sit in the meantime. Sit and think about what you did or didn't do. Not playing basketball. Okay. Predictions the week ahead. We are, I believe, tied at 3-3. Right? That makes sense. That checks out. Okay. I'm going to assume it checks out. And we're picking 3 games. All 3 are home games. Got the Orlando Magic at home. That's if the Knicks win that, they go to the NBA Cup. If they don't win that, they don't go to the NBA Cup. Very simple. Charlotte Hornets. That's on Thursday. And then the Detroit Pistons on Saturday. It's a tough one for me. I know where my heart is going. I know what my head is telling me to do, as is so often the case when we do these. Those 2 things are at odds. Do I think that now that we have crossed the 20-game threshold that they have magically figured it out? I don't know. The reason why, and to be clear, my head is telling me to go 2-1. Here's the thing, though. If they beat Orlando, do I really think they're going to drop a game to the Hornets or to the Pistons? And because I'm uncertain about the answer to that question, and because I'm damn uncertain that they're going to beat the Magic, I'm going to go to 2-1, and I'm going to leave 3-0 for you.
I will take 3-0, but I don't think that the Pistons should be taken lightly.
Should not be.
And I think the Hornets clearly showed they can hang in with the Knicks. So I would have taken 2-1. It's a safer bet than 3-0, but I don't really want to take 1 and 2. So 3-0 it is.
No, you can't take 1. It is the safer bet, and yet, would it shock me if this team went on a run? And I'm not saying like all consecutive wins, but just like as if the 20-game thing was actually real, and it's like, oh, now they've got it. Like, or they've got it to the point where they're like, more often than not, they're going to be able to put forth a commensurate two-way performance. And I like, or that's why this Orlando game, I feel like is going to tell us a lot. Like where they at right now is a nasty effing team. So if they're not ready to play, not only will they lose, they may get smoked. Like Orlando's that good. So even with no Banchero. Anyway, I'll stick with my pick. Yeah.
December, I was going to say, you talked about a run. I mean, this is their moment. If the Knicks want to capitalize on this month, they beat New Orleans as they should have. Then they have Orlando, Charlotte, Detroit, and then Toronto, Minnesota, New Orleans, Toronto, San Antonio, Orlando, and then 2 games against Washington to close out the year.
This is like, it's there for them. Mm-hmm. Like you want to be a serious team. You want to be a serious team, not next year, not in 2 years. You want to be a serious team this year. Go out and start to show it right now. So needless to say, I hope your prediction is correct. And that'll do it for us on this episode. Andrew, anything we missed?
Not that I know of. Pre-game pod at noon on Tuesday with Kevin Tucker of the Sixth Man Show. And then John and I will be doing a watch along for the Knicks Magic game. And then your normal post game. So there you go.
Make sure you ask him many questions about Puff the Magic Dragon.
Your favorite mascot, right?
I mean, there's so many to pick from that I love them all so much. It's like picking which is my favorite child. Actually, that analogy works on several levels. Yeah. Anyway.
You've been big on the analogies today.
I really have.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you enjoyed them.
Let's got to make a baseball one to close this out.
Well, the baseball ones I enjoyed. The John's dating history ones I had to perk up and say, I wonder if he'll land this plane. And you did. I thought that was a great analogy. Well done.
Seal of approval. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I speak for Jeremy when I say like, okay, let's see where this goes. Let's see how he tiptoes.
Smile and nod. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Just weird. Okay.
Interesting. That's the direction we're going. Okay. All right. Sure, makes sense.
Dating the hot girl. Got it.
Great.
Okay.
That's
fine.
And you know what?
Cool. And we're starting a thing with the hot girl. Got it.
As proof,
Knicks are the hot girl.
As proof, I married the hot girl, and it's the deepest relationship I've ever had. So there you go. And now I'm gonna go upstairs and have dinner with the hot girl and the 2 children that she so delightfully gave me. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you.
If you want, I'll clip this and send it to her.
Please do. Checks in the mail. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We appreciate your support as always. Please consider supporting the show even more by leaving a positive review, rating, or anything else that you could do to help spread the word. Andrew told you everything that's coming up, so I don't need to go through it. Everybody enjoy your week, and we'll be back soon. Peace out.